Good afternoon. Thank you for joining us today for an introduction of changes to ISO 45001. My name is Katie LaHoulier. I'm TUB USA's training coordinator and today's host. At the end of this webinar, we will have a section for Q&A. Please write any questions you have in the chat section of the webinar. Before we get started, I would like to introduce our presenter, Fanny Ho. Fanny is TUB USA's training manager. She has over 27 years of global training and auditing experience in diversified industries ranging from manufacturing, service, IT, finance sectors, and more. She is certified with Exemplar Global and IRCA as lead auditor and is qualified on ISO 45001, 9001, 14001, and ISO 27001. I will now pass this over to Fanny to start the training. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Katie. So good afternoon, everybody, and thank you so much again for joining today's webinar. And just thank you, Katie, for the introduction of myself as well. And basically, I just want to add a few things that also qualify as the ISO 50001, ISO 22301 business continuity, ISO 20001, which is the information services, and ISO 37001, which is anti-bribery, and ISO 26000, that is the corporate social responsibility, and also IATF 16949 2016, auditor, certified auditor as well, with the greenhouse gas, which is the talk about environmental, close to environmental area, and really now too, that is the combination of occupational health, safety, quality, and also the environmental management system together, dedicated to the electronic recycling and also metal recycling industry. All right, so let's start with our course, the webinar today. Basically, the webinar today is covering the ISO 45001 2018 standard, and which is a change from the OHSAS 18001 2007 standard. It is currently still okay to be used until 2021. But this ISO 45001 is going to replace the OHSAS 18001 after March 11, 2021. And the OHSAS 18001 can no longer be available and also be utilized anymore. So I'll go through the standard in an overview situation so you know what it's all about of the standard. And also I will cover the major changes from the OHSAS 18001 2007 version and versus the ISO 45001 2018 version. And lastly, I will talk about the transition requirement and the deadline that your organization has to comply with. Okay, first of all is what is ISO 45001 2018 standard? Okay, 45001 2018 standard, definitely it is part of international standard. But this international standard is mainly developed for occupational health and safety program. And this is a not a guideline, but it is a requirement that we need to utilize it to comply with in order to be able to certify by third party to be named as ISO 45001 2018 certified company. So we need to follow everything within the 45001 standard in order to be able to be third-party certified. Some company, they would like to utilize it to implement the standard, right? That's why the second paragraph I said that it will contain the requirement that can be used by any organization if they want to implement the occupational health and safety management system and to use to assess their conformity to the standard. Some company, they will say, I would like to get implementation of the standard, but however, they will wait a little bit later to get certified by a third-party organization. That's okay as well, but this standard is definitely showing a number of requirements that what an organization shall do to control their occupational health and safety program in their organization. Okay, why do we need occupational health and safety management system in an organization? This is a question that I would like you guys to think about in your organization. Why do we need that? Is any driver behind it that drive an organization to get a program in place to be followed with the standard requirement in order to control the occupational health safety? Think about that. What is the reason behind? Because definitely I'm sure that you will have your answers as well. And let's go with some generic information first that maybe also give you some more additional information. So there's, if you look at in the world, there are about 19 fatalities per day. That means over 7,000 fatalities in a year is related to occupational health and safety issues. This is not talking about the people driving on the road and end up that, they got killed themselves. It is talking about that at work. Some people, they're driving on the road, but however, they're driving to the client's location because of work-related activities. And some people that they may need to be on a flight to get to the client's location. In that case, they're working on behalf of the organization. But unfortunately, they commit any accidents. So that's why it causes fatality. But this fatality may not be just talk about driving. It could be within the plant. Some people that they will say, I am actually driving a forklift truck, okay, or we call it like a kind of high-lows. When the people driving the high-lows in your organization, if they don't handle it very carefully, and that would cause fatality as well. If lesser impact, maybe kind of long-term disability, or even lesser, they may get some injuries, and that can be recoverable. But however, in terms of fatality, is kind of a lot related to the work incidents. And fatality at work. What do you think about that? Can we measure the cost for fatality at work? That's become very important that, the company will look at that, with the people die at work, what does it cost to them? Sometimes not only cost to the company themselves for business purposes, but also sometimes it will be kind of cost to the family, because the family, they may have a person that the husband is the main person that to make the money for the family, but if, the person die at work, and end up that the family lose the support. That would cost a lot of maybe insurance kicks in and everything. So if it's not only just talking about for the company point of view, but on the society point of view, that is really high cost for if having anyone that die at work. And every 15 seconds, you can see there's 151 workers has work-related accidents. So we just talk about fatality, right? The people die at work. But this time we're talking about the people, it's not die at work, but it's having an accident, or sometimes we call incidents. The accidents, that means if you see on the picture and people maybe climbing up, the top floors, or maybe them climb up on the ladders and end up that they fell, or maybe sometimes that they're walking, in the workplace, and unfortunately that there's a slip, trip, and fall, and end up that, the people kind of get injured. Could be you see on the right shoulder, sometimes the body injury, and sometimes could be they cannot walk. So you see that it's pretty high numbers. Also 15 seconds, there are 151 workers have some accidents. Sometimes maybe we call it incidents, INCIDENT, incidents. What incidents means that may not necessarily be causing an injury, but it's kind of miss, kind of near miss, and nearly the person that may be causing kind of slip, trip, and fall, and then it's just near miss that he doesn't get any injury in his touch wood. So that could occur as well. So, but we need to think about that, whatever reasons, whatever anything behind that is causing issues to the organization, economically, and also the society. there's a 2,500 permanent disability in a year related to the world that, the people kind of working in their facility or in the shop or whatever, they get permanent disability. So that is a high number too, right? So and could be the numbers ongoing as well. But if the company that they have a good control in their organization, then hopefully the number can be reduced. Okay, again, that can we measure the cost? If the people that they're on long-term disability, not fatality, right? On fatality that, well, people died at work, and then definitely we lose a person, and then and the family lose a person, support the family. But on the other hand, that if the people is not dying, it's really have long-term disability permanently. That also costs to the family, right? The family has to support the person for long-term or even permanently. On the other hand, that the company that will lose a person, then the company has to pay insurance, right, just to keep the person, pay them on long-term disability. And on the other hand, that the company will lose a person, and they need to find another person to replace the position. So that is the cost that we need to measure as well when there's any work-related accidents. And substantial economic loss. So as I mentioned, something about the economy, right? So not only just talk about just the family and the company, and sometimes, as I said, the whole healthcare systems also get affected, right? If the people kind of get injured, they are sent to the hospital. And in Canada, for example, that we're covering for our medical situation, then there will be a cost to the hospital, right, just to treat the person. And on the other hand, that as I said, to the families and to the company, to society also, that would be substantial economic cost, if there's any things happen at work. So let's take a look at the cost of accidents at work. Number one is medical and compensation payment. That is the one I just mentioned not long ago, right? So the people kind of have injured, or even the people kind of die at work, whatever, and still, we need to compensate the family and also even the person, and also there's some medical expenses that we have to pay for, right, from an organization's point of view, or even the organization buy insurance, or an insurance firm has to pay for that, and also to the society, right, some government, right, as I said, they support the medical, like Canada, and the Ontario government or the Canadian government has support the medical payment as well. Payment for work not performed. So again, that if the person leave for absence, right, for permanently or even for a month or 2 months, and we still need to pay for the person. But however, that we need to find another person to take over the job, but on the other hand, that we still need to pay for the person who is injured. So that's the cost we need to build into our consideration. Thirdly, is a reduction or temporary halt in the production. So if the company is a manufacturing firm, so again, that if there's any accidents occurred, and end up that there would be a stop in the production, right? Because we need to think about that, not only a person, but also maybe we need to think about having some measures in place before we run the machine again, because the machine is causing people to injure. Maybe because it is talk about the machinery breakdown, or that may be some issues related to the mechanical system of the machines, then that's only the production floor has to stop and look into what's going on, investigation, and then after that, put some measure in place. So for definitely a period of time that the production could be reduced, and or maybe sometimes it could become to a halt for a period of time. And the cost of regulatory fines. Another thing that we need to think about is the fines to the organization. So in North America, it is very strict rules that if the person can die at work or because of any accidents occurred, and OHSA and definitely will be looking after that. So and they need to fine the organization. Even sometimes the owner has to go to jail. because they do not making sure that the workplace is safe. And then repair and replacement of any damaged machinery. So another thing we need to look into is definitely the cost for the machinery and the equipment replacement or repair. As I mentioned, sometimes the reason why there's accidents occurred or whatever happened at the work floor is because of the machine is broken down, or maybe if there's any damages to the equipment, it is malfunctioning, and maybe there's any safety feature that cannot be kind of satisfactory being in place, and that's why we need to fix it. So that will be a cost involved for that too. Loss of reputation, industry, and community. If a company that having a lot of issues at work for their workers, and definitely it will be on the news, it will be on TV, on social media. They cannot only keep in just to themselves, and then that will be a very bad reputation to a company, no matter whether they're a small company or big company. And nobody would like to come to work in that place because it's not safe. And on the other hand, that that will be building a very bad reputation within their own industry as well. And loss of the order from the customer. Another thing we need to think about that the customer will lose interest, will lose their confidence, I would say, their interest in kind of using the company to supply the products to them, because they feel that, well, if I use the company to produce certain products to us, and then end up that the company that the supply is not a safe place, and it causes problems, and end up that then they do not feel that if there's a big company that they feel, well, it will lose their reputation to use them, number one, and also that not really sometimes causing a delay in the delivery because the company, the supplier may need to have a temporary halt in the production, or maybe the workers that they need to find someone to replace it, and that would be definitely kind of having an impact on to the customer as well, maybe late delivery, or may not be able to even deliver to the customer with the job finished. And also the customer will look at the point that it's a bad reputation. If I use the supplier, it causes a bad reputation to them as well. A long time ago, that Walmart example that they use a supplier in the Southeast Asia countries that the company that the supplier is having really not good for occupational health safety. But they're making a lot of textile products for Walmart that is used in North America, that's being sold in North America. End up that there's kind of on the TV that the company that in the South America, in the South Asia countries, that they're on fire, and then end up that looking into what's the problem, because there's no any fire protections, anything in place in the organization, in the supplier's location, and that's why causing fire at work, and then a couple hundred people died. And then end up that Walmart has a very, very bad name about that, and there is even a lot of consumers, they don't even want to buy something from Walmart, because they said if I buy something from Walmart and they still continue using the supply that without any good health and safety program in place, and that is not really helping. So that's why it's really causing a big issues to the customer as well. Negative impact on morale of the employee. That's another thing we need to consider, right? If a person died at work, or maybe a person that is because of any problem, not safe place, and then end up that the people working there and they got injured, and then the other coworker, and they will really feel the same thing, right? They may say, well, this place is not safe to work, and they may want to leave, or even though it's a company, they do not make any change to it. And then end up that, the people that they will lose the morale to continue working in the organization. And also, there is accident investigation and reporting costs. Once the accident occurs and there is any investigation has to be moved. There's by law as well. And also there's a reporting structure that we need to follow per OSHA. So in that case, there will be cost involved, right? So we need to investigate the person who who died at work or even get injured and what causes the issue. So that's all the causes we need to build in to consider. and increased administrative measure, right? So as a lot of paperwork, a lot of things, even the people that they cannot kind of work and then for a number of months, and then we need to get another replacement. And there's a lot of things that we need to look into, right? Sick leave application and all the costs we need to build in. So with all the costs we just talked about, and that's why it drives us to think about that we need a structured program in place for occupational health and safety. And that the ISO 45001 2018 version can help us. So let's take a look at why do we need that standard. Okay, so if we take a look at number one is the evolution of stakeholder and expectation. So as I mentioned that if the stakeholder, that means interested party, including the family, right? The employee, the family, and could be the community, and also could be the customers, could be the consumer, and they have a high expectation, definitely to make sure that the workplace that they're using or they're working in is safe. So that's what we need to look into, having a program in place to comply with ISO 45001 to make it work. Next is the advancement in the working environment. As I said that before, if there's anything that we can do well in the workplace, if we can make the place more safer, and we can make sure that the equipment is not broken down, and then make sure that there's a lot of safety features in the organization, that the people, even though they're handling any dangerous equipment or even they need to work from height, and if there's a lot of measures in place already, preventive measure, then we don't need to worry about that the accident will occur, even though maybe a lot of time it could be zero. So, but however, in order to make it happen, then we need some help, and then if the 45001 can help us doing a lot of things that in place and make sure that the workplace is getting better. And consistent with other management system as well. One of the goals for ISO 45001, which is different than OHSAS 18001, is structure of the standard. A lot of companies, they are not only having ISO 45001, they will have ISO 9001 standard in place, or maybe ISO 14001 for environmental management systems in place as well. So in order to make it easier for them to combine with the certification, then in that case, using the ISO 45001, they follow the same structure. We call it the Annex SL, and the structure level. That is standardized the way how we structure the standard. If any company, they would like to implement ISO 9001, 14001, ISO 45001, or any other new standard for ISO 9000, ISO standard, they follow the same structure. It's easier to make it kind of put together, implemented it, and also get certified. They can even get one kind of multi-certification, but they will have the same workforce, right? So because the procedures, their system, maybe document control system, and they can handle all the three standards instead of only one. Because the standard structure pretty much is the same, so it's easier to help them to be combining with other standards to work together. Okay, so with all this, then we need ISO 45001 2018 to help us. The reason for the change from OHSAS 18001 to ISO 45001. Okay, so number one, the need for change is because we need to improve our framework. And again, that we need to make sure that in order to kind of having a good occupational health safety program in place, we need a framework. And that's the ISO 45001 provided an improved framework than OHSAS 18001. And the next thing is consistency. And we have consistency with the other standard, as I said, for 9001, 14001, or rather newly or revised ISO standard. Then they have the same structure, easier to combine together. And also, there's a new ISO requirement, as I mentioned just before, Annex SL. SL stands for structure level. So that actually standardizes the high-level structure for the ISO standard. There's a core text involved also. So when you see the ISO 45001 standard, then also compare with the ISO 9001 standard, then you will see that the title, the top title, the main title are the same, and the clause is from 1 to 10. It's pretty much very structured, and the same also. Common terms with core definition. So, and also with a lot of definition that, or terms and definition, they're the same thing. So, for example, we talk about the definition for accidents, and that it should be pretty much, go across all the ISO standard, what the accidents means, incidents means, and investigation means, consultation means, documented information means, that have the same terms, definition. And also designed to benefit the user implement multiple ISO programs. And that's why I said that before, if we want to implement ISO 9001, 14001, or 45001 together, that's very common in the market now. It's very easy to do that with the same structure, which is based on the one I just mentioned about NXFL. And also, we need to think about when we have any systems in place, we want to be value added. We want to give value to the organization. And with the change, it's definitely give a very good value to the organization, better than before. And also the service sector. A lot of companies that, if they're in the service sector, for example, a bank, hotel, travel agency, employment agency, or any office type of business, and they are not really involved a lot in the manufacturing, then end up they still be able to utilize the ISO 45001 standard. Because in the old days, a lot of people thinking about all the ISO standard is mainly geared towards the manufacturing sector, not the service sector. But however, that's not the right concept. But unfortunately, in the standard, without NXSL, as I mentioned before, that there's a lot of terms and things that like only the manufacturing firms will utilize it. So end up that there's a lot of people thinking about if I'm a hotel, if I am just like a restaurant, I will not be able to get ISO 45001. But with the NXSL being introduced to all the ISO standard, the new one, the revised one, that it makes it easier. So we remove a lot of terms that only geared towards manufacturing. For example, equipment. So a lot of companies that maybe like talk about the equipment, manufacturing equipment, is only a lot of times that machines, right, working in the manufacturing firms, but not like, in like an employment agency maybe. So in that case, we try to eliminate some of the wording, very hardware type, and then just blend it into more generic terms. And also remain generic to include all type and size of the industry. So another thing we need to think about that is in order to make it easier for the people to combine with different standards together, and if we make it very generic, and also no matter which industry that they want to follow the ISO 45001, they can do it, then that's the goal also. Because if the company, they're only a bank, they're a restaurant, or they're just an office, like a small office, and then just customer service office, and if they can utilize the ISO 45001, then that's really great help to organizations, small one, to structure the occupational health safety program. And now, with the new standard, rather than the OHSAS 18001, and they can do it. Expected outcome of occupational health and safety management system. So again, that there's a couple of things that, number one, on the left-hand side, you see that it's the continual improvement of the performance. We want to get it better. We want to have less or even zero kind of fatality at work, and we have zero lost time. That's most of the company that they aim for, right? Nobody will type a leave of absence because of any problem at work. Achieve the occupational health safety objective. There shall be goals and objectives developed for the organization in order to comply with the ISO 45001 standard. Then there's a goal set usually, maybe zero lost time, and then maybe a small amount of incidents, and then first aid treatment, anything like that. So we set a goal in the organization. We want to achieve it. And fulfill legal and other requirements. Another big thing in the occupational health safety program is different countries have their own occupational health safety rules and regulations. Then we need to fulfill that. Per the ISO 45001 standard, all the regulations that in the country they're operating in, and also any other requirement. Other requirement could be related to the industry, right, co-apprentice, and sometimes could be the headquarter has got some rules that they have to follow occupational health safety-wise, then that's other requirement other than legal. Then we still need to follow it per the ISO 45001 requirement. Why do we need to have all these three things? Because at the end, we want to make it safe in the workplace, we want to make it efficient in the workplace, and also happiness happen in the workplace. Key changes from the OHSAS 18001 to 45001. Okay, so I will show you that the structure of ISO 45001. You can see that like the 10 clauses. In the ISO 45001 standard, there are total clause 1 to 10. And then the scope, number one, is talk about what the standard covered, okay? And basically, they just talk about that it is it is generic to any organization, and they need to implement the occupational health safety program. And that's kind of coverage for the standard. And also the standard is generic to any industry. Could be a restaurant, could be a hotel, could be a manufacturing firms, and could be a nuclear plant, a steel mill, factory, anything like that. Normative references means that are there any stipulating references, standard references in the standard for 45001? There's none, okay? And terms and definition. There's some new terms and revised terms compared to the OHSAS 18001. And because there are some terms that which is really added, like participation, there's a new term that we need some explanation about that. So it's been added into the new standard. And context of the organization. Context means the business environment of the organization. Are there any business environment issues? Any interested party, they have any needs expectation? What is the scope of their occupational health and safety management system? And also, how do they structure the occupational health and safety management system? And clause number 5, or section number 5, the leadership and worker participation. It covers like leadership and commitment from the top management. Occupational health and safety policy, we need to have an umbrella statement up top to tell us that what we aim for. Organizational roles, responsibility, authority, who's doing what in terms of occupational health safety responsibility. We might need a person that, like, if there's any people have issues about occupational health safety, who should they go to? Or we need to have a team together, like first aid team, if the people get injured and where they can go to, and something like that, right? And also joint health and safety committee. And we need a committee in place that the people can speak on behalf of the employees, and also with management representatives to talk about what they can do to deal with the issues related to occupational health safety. Then we need workers' consultation and participation, right? One very important thing for occupational health safety is we need the workers provide the input, because they are the ones to work in the shop and they need to know what's going on. Planning. What is the risk opportunity? Are there any high risk in any areas that related to occupational health safety? We need to take care of it. Any better thing we can do it for opportunity-wise? We need to identify any hazards in the workplace, any risk involved, opportunity that we can do better. So that's we need the input from the management and also the workers. Any legal and other requirement we need to conform to, and planning action. We need to have an action in place to tell us that how can we address any objective, right, any policy. And also, we need to set some objective planning how to achieve that. Support. We need some resources, right? Could be people, could be machines, sometimes could be money, and sometimes could be the time, could be the knowledge, could be any equipment we need to, safety equipment we need to put in place. The people's competency. Are they aware of what the occupational health safety rules and regulations, what they can do to make it better? Awareness. Is all the workers aware of any rules and requirements in the organization? Any communication to talk about occupational health safety, any documented information like record and procedures and documents to address occupational health safety rules and regulations or any procedures. Operation. So what is the planning? If we do have any hazards, and then we need to have planning and control to address those hazards and risks, any emergency preparedness and response in place. How do we monitor and measure our system to measure how many incidents, how many accidents, what is internal audit, what is the management review, we can review the system in place, and also improvement. Are there any incident, nonconformity that we need to address that? What the corrective action to address any nonconformity to make sure that the root cause is being get rid of, and also will be long-term preventive that nothing will happen again. Are there anything we can do better? Even though we don't have any issue, can we do better? Okay, there's some correspondence between the ISO 45001 and OHSAS 18001. I think in general speaking, you will see that the section over here that comparing to the old standard, definitely there's a lot more, right? Especially there's a lot more things under context organization. The only thing in the past is occupational health safety, but now we're building the business environment into it, right? The need, expectation, interested parties, a new one. Leadership and workers' participation. Leadership is not stressed before, but now it is. But all the others, you see policy, roles, responsibility, participation, consultation, and those things, we have a lot more things in here for the new standard. Planning, there's a lot more things in the planning, right? You see that the only thing we talk about has identification risk in the past, right, about control, legal, objective. But on this side, you see that we address any risk opportunity and more details on how can we identify them and do it, and how do we assess them, and what is the action we need to address that. So there's more things built into this. And support, right? Again, that you see there's a lot of things in the support. Like talk about the resources before we kind of lump together for resources, roles, responsibility, authority, but now we kind of building into only separate them resources. Competency, training built into the competency. But awareness that you see before we combine together, but now we put a separate clause to emphasize awareness is very important in the organization too. Communication is always important, but we address internal and also anything we need to address externally. Even though communication about occupational health safety internally, but we need to tell outside people what we have done, anything to do it better. Any documentation, that's what we used to call document and record, but now we call documented information. Operation, then you can see a lot more things in details. How can we eliminate the hazards, reducing the risk, any change management, if we change any policy for occupational health safety in the organization, do we have a structure where it get authorized what the new change would be? Do we communicate to the relevant person? So we need a management of the change. And also, we have a procurement, right? So when we purchase anything, we need to think about, like, for example, we buy a new machine, what is the risk involved in the new machine, and what kind of hazards will be occurring if operating the new machine. So we need to think about that. Contractor. We've used a lot of contractors sometimes coming in to do the work. They could be helping us to fix our machines, and then do they know what to follow for occupational health safety? Even though if there's any problem, if the contractor work on behalf of organization die at the workplace, still it is the organization's responsibility. Outsourcing. So if we outsource any activity to the outside, and then do they know what our safety rules when they come to work for us? And emergency preparedness response, we had that before, and then now we still have a little bit more strengthened requirement on that for the 45001. Okay, and performance evaluation. Before you will talk about tracking, but now it is much more, right? How do we measure it? And we have got evaluation compliance before, no change, internal audit, but it's more detail about what we need to do with a program for addressing our internal audit, management review, and what we can do, improvement. So improvement now, and with a continual improvement separate. Sometimes we may not have any issue, but we want to do it better. That fall into the continual improvement. All right, so let's take a look at more details also related to the overview of the key changes. So strategic management. Number one that we need to top involved in that. We need to combine our occupational health safety program together with our business processes. leadership. As I mentioned, there's a clause for leadership. We need the top management to tell the people that we have a program in place. We're on top of that. We're very, very concerned about that. So if with the top management involved and also with the workers' involvement in that, and definitely it's guaranteeing the success of the program. Risk opportunity, there's a new requirement, right? As I mentioned that in the past, we only get the word hazard, but not risk and opportunity. But now we need to think about any risk involved and in anything in our organization. For example, I walk through a place and then say, oh, there may be an electrical cord which is in the middle of the walkway. If the people, they don't pay attention to it, they may be tripped and fall. So in that case, we need to identify those risks, and then, or maybe even though right now it is not a real risk to the people, but could be, then we need to do better opportunity. Awareness, as I mentioned that we separate them out from competency training awareness, now we place a lot of emphasis on the new clause and telling the people, even though we communicate to them, do they get it? Operational control, so we need some strong measure in place to implement what we think about. What's the risk? What's the opportunity to make it better? And there's expanded requirements for hierarchy of control. Definitely, we want a lot more on to elimination. If there's any dangerous machines that we feel that there's cause a lot of problems, can we eliminate the operation? If we cannot eliminate, substitute with a lesser dangerous equipment. And then if not, then what is the measure we can do? Engineering control, maybe some warning to tell people if something goes wrong and people will hear the alarm. And next thing is that we might need to do training, right? Administrative procedures and right procedures, train the people. So we need to think about there's a lot of hierarchy of the control in place too. Management of change, as I said, if there's any change in the rules, regulation, how do we formalize it? If we outsource any processes to the people, do they know what we expect them to do? If we outsource any work to let someone to work on behalf of the organization and at the client's location for fixing a machine and end up that they don't follow our rules and then they cause kind of accidents and things like that, still we need to also be responsible for that too. Procurement, contractor management become more important, right? So we need to think about that. New clause added, continual improvement. Okay, so overview, as I mentioned that we need all these things, right? Structure, context, and then which is business environment, continual improvement, operational control, risk, objective, and leadership. They build together, they make the system work. And also, the system within the framework is a risk-based. That's why I mentioned about risk opportunity. And make sure that our policy objectives established according to our strategic direction, our business, right, context of the organization. And make sure that we integrate the system into our processes. So we make it into one. So we're not only just doing occupational health safety and the top management don't know. We don't want to have that happen. And then talk about the context of the organization. Okay, that's business environment of the organization. We need to determine any internal, external issue of the organization. And then think about what we can do to help out with the occupational health safety. Example, external issue. For example, there's a lot of changing regulations in occupational health safety. Are we able to deal with that? Are we able to meet the requirement internally? Do we have any kind of money, resources to help us to learn the new regulations? So we need to think about those before we implement it successfully for a program. Determine interested party. Interested party, as I mentioned, could be internal people, top management, owner, and could be the shareholders. Externally, could be the community, could be the OHSAS, regulatory bodies, and could be insurance company. We need to think about the need expectation. So we need to think about all these things, interested party, internal, external issue, when we develop our occupational health and safety program. Overview of the key changes for leadership and worker. As I mentioned now, senior management take on a key role to make sure that they put in place the emphasis, they strongly support the occupational health safety program. Not only they support it, they need to be providing hands-on involvement. So that's why a lot of detail in the 5.1 clause for the top management in the standard. And now the figure top management appointee is not required explicitly. In the old standard, OHSAS 18001, we need a go-to person called appointee for occupational health safety in place in the organization. Now, you may think about any structure to do it. And top management need to ensure the worker, they participate into the occupational safety heavily. Risk opportunity. And the risk we talk about example, right? So like, for example, there's an injury from the manual handling of the product, and then maybe there's a potential for any entrapment and entrainment of the body part into the moving equipment that will cause injury. In that case, we need to think about any measure in place, right? So that's example for the risk that we talk about in the standard. Opportunity example, when the economic program in place or fitness standards, because there's a lot of injury could occur in the work, and then are there anything we can do better? For example, sometimes people, carpal tunnel issue, right? There's a lot of times people using computer. Maybe the company can think about a new computer platform for them to put their hands on, and then better, like, you know, the mouse and things like that to help them easily to utilize the computer. Then that can help them to get it better, right? And or maybe prevent the injury. Machine guarding, right? So if the machine guarding, hopefully if there's like good measure in place and zero access, if the machine is working automatically, there's no one can actually go in. If there's anything goes in, and they will stop the machine. So there will be something that, or even a safety curtain in place to stop that. So that would be opportunity the company can think about. Okay, preventive action. Preventive action is no longer there because we utilize the risk, right? The risk already addressed the same thing as preventive action. Because the definition of preventive action is we think about anything could occur, address the root cause, and fix it. That's the same thing as risk management. Now risk is very heavily built into the standard, clause 6. So we don't need the preventive action to separately too. And reference made to the risk, identification of risk and planning is addressed very well, and that is because the Annex SL telling us that we use the risk management to replace the preventive action. We follow the Annex structure level. And operational control, we need a lot of process in place to address our occupational health safety program, right? We identify a lot of risk, opportunity, any new concept. For example, we require hierarchy control, management of change, control procurement, how do we purchase the product, are they safe product to work with, enhancement requirement of procurement, contractors, when we outsource anything, and can we ensure that they follow our rules and regulations for occupational health safety, then that's all we need to think about. That's enhanced requirement for that. Okay, enhanced requirement related performance monitoring. We need to better measure our number of injury, first aid treatment, and accidents, incidents, and fatality numbers, and those type of things. With a focus on the review of the changes in trend, not only just looking at the 1 month, 1 year, we need to look at the trend. What's the culture to support occupational health safety system, any participation from the workers, and do we communicate well to the worker and representative? So that's what we need to think about. Okay, so now we talk about the transition. So since we already captured all the key points for the ISO 45001 that is different than old standard OHSAS 18001, then now we need to think about when do we need to make the change. Actually, now is the time for you to do that because we have a 3-year transition period. The standard came out actually on March 12, 2018. We add 3 years, usually minus 1 day most of the time, and that is the March 11, 2021. So all the organization, if they have been certified to the OHSAS 18001, and they need to be kind of transitioned to the ISO 45001 after, or even now that you can transition, but even well, before that, I would say. But after that, like the March 11, 2021, then sorry, and then the old standard will not be available, and then we have to comply with the new standard. So that's why we say expiration day is to the end of 3 years is March 11, 2021. So we need to make sure that if your organization has been accredited, has been certified to the OHSAS 18001, make sure that you need to get that done. That is not only just implemented it, but the audit has to be complete and address all the nonconformity certificate has been issued before this date. Okay, and also accreditation body also publish a lot of rules anyway based on the IAF guideline. So that is telling us that as a registrar, how do we follow the rules. And transition audit can be completed in a regular audit, right? So when you schedule for surveillance audit or recertification audit, you can do that. But the additional time needed, right, depend on how big the organization would be and then what changes, but usually minimum 1 additional day, but it depends on, okay? Okay, so now I want to summarize our webinar, right? Number one, we talk about understand what is the ISO 40000 and 45001 standard. And we try to talk about some of the key changes, right, from the OHSAS 18001 to the ISO 45001. And also we talk about the transition rules from the OHSAS 18001 to the ISO 45001. I hope that it addressed all your requirements. Okay, so now is the question and answer time. So now what you can do if you want, I think Katie already sent a message out to you guys that if you have any questions, okay, what you can do is you can actually put in the chat box, which is in the system on top or whatever, you can seal it, the chat, CHAT, and then you can just type your question and send it to me. Okay, then I will be able to seal it and I will answer it. Okay, maybe in the meantime, so while I'm waiting, or if you don't have any question, what I would like to do, I would say, let's just think about that, okay? So number one, is a common question. A lot of people asking me about what is the context of the organization. Do you guys know the answer? I actually emphasize a lot about that, right? If you still remember the clause 4, okay, up top, that we have a title for context of the organization. What does it mean? If you guys know the answers, you can put under the chat box and let me know and send it to me. Okay, so if not, I provide the answers. The context of the organization is the business environment, okay? And another question I would like to ask you guys about is, or common questions from the people is about is the mental illness involved in the ISO 45001. So for example, because of the people, they kind of get like a lot of stress, end up that like, you know, they're under too much stress and end up that they have some issue with the mental, whatever. Does it cover under this ISO 45001? Anyone know the answers? Okay, so the answers is yes. Actually, the ISO 45001 does cover that. Actually, even the OHSAS 18001, it does talk about that too as well. One of the reasons is because there's a lot of time that when we have the workplace that not only just physically, right? If we're like a manufacturing firm, and then yes, we actually need to work with a lot of machines and things like that. But for like an office type, and most of the time that there's no machine that we need to involve a lot, right? Except just like the printers and maybe a very like a light equipment, could be a computer. But the hazards is very, very limited versus than the manufacturing firm. So most of the time in the office setting, most of the time that office setting will create is maybe because we need to meet the deadline, okay? I have audited in a company that they're developing some flyers for Loblaw, and they have a deadline that they have to finish the design by 6 o'clock and also make the Photoshop by 6 every day, 6 p.m., before they can send it out to the printer and they have to be on time. So if they miss the deadline, and then they cannot meet for next morning delivery for the flyer. So a lot of people is coming under stress about that. So in that case, then if that's because of stress at work and the people get sick and they cannot come to work, and that still be covered under the Occupational Health Safety Program, which is kind of dictated by the ISO 45001. Sometimes the issues that could be like if you hear in the hospital, right, a lot of doctors, they are having a very heavy workload, and then end up there's a lot of doctors themselves, they're not really kind of be able to manage the stress, and then take a long time off, and then so that's all because the work problem. So in that case, still causing the issues to the Occupational Health Safety Program, then still cover under the ISO 45001. All right, so anyway, since you guys don't have any question, that I would like to say where we can find our training courses. So we have a number of training courses here that you can see, well, actually it's from our website, and there's a website that you guys can go to, and for any public training offering. Okay, but if you have any need for any in-house courses, then as long as we can make sure that we can do it, and we'll be able to address that. And upcoming training course 45001, we have a 2-day course in Mississauga on July 22nd, 23rd, but we also have the 1-day course then October 7th in Atlanta, Georgia, and then 2-day for 45001 2018 Internal Auditor, which is running concurrently with the 1-day in Atlanta, and also 3-day Advanced Internal Auditor course for October 7 to 9, and then also the same location running concurrently with these 2 courses. Okay, so something about TUV group. So basically, we're over 70 countries operation, right? So we have got like a lot of about 2.8 Canadian dollars and plus billion dollars, right? And to running, and we actually run since 1865, and we have over like 40,000 customers in the field certification worldwide. And we also have 63,000 plus certified systems and give out the certificate to the clients. And also we have 40 subsidiaries and then 150 locations, and we have over 13,000 employees and 3,000 auditors in the world. So you see all the logos for us that we're running for our business too. And there is something about TUV USA and Canada with training certification that apart from we just talk about ISO 45001, right? Then we have quality 9001, 40001, environmental, greenhouse gas, corporate social responsibility 26001, ISO 22301, that is we talk about business continuity, 30001, which is the risk management, and that's here, okay. ISO 37001, anti-bribery, and also AS 9100, aerospace and automotive, IT 16949, and also we have IRIS, ISO 29990 for the personnel training. And food safety, there's a lot over here too, you can see, right, for all the food safety training programs, and medical too, and then IT information security sector. Okay, anyway, thank you so much for attending the webinar, and if you have any further questions, if you could let us know. And right now I would like to pass to Katie, and then she's our host for today. Thank you.
Hi, thank you, Fanny. I just want to end that this webinar has been recorded, and we will have this on our website for you to review. You will receive an email with a link to our website. And thank you so much, Fanny. This was very informative. Thank you for attending today.
Thank you to all. Thank you, Katie.